Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'll just give us a few more moments while people continue to trickle in. Hope everyone's having a great day. Okay, so I think I'll begin. So good afternoon. My name is Caitlin Jaggers. I am the research lead at the Alzheimer Society of Canada in the Research Knowledge Translation and Exchange Department. The Alzheimer Society of Canada is very pleased to welcome you to another ASRP Exchange presentation that is being offered through our Provincial Support Program. This series has been developed to feature Alzheimer Society Research Program recipients who have completed their funding and who will speak to the outcomes of their supported research while addressing how their results have and will continue to impact individuals with lived experience. Joining us today, we have Daisy Couture from the Alzheimer Society of British Columbia, who will assist in moderating the question and answer period following today's presentation. I would like to start off today's webinar by going through the agenda presented here, and then I will pass it over to our presenter, Dr. Lillian Hung. Before we begin, please note this webinar is estimated to be under 1 hour in length and is being recorded, but only the video and the audio of the presenters is captured during this recording. The presentation recording, in addition to the PowerPoint slides in PDF form, will be made available on Connection for Alzheimer Society staff, as well as on the Alzheimer Society of Canada's website on our ASRP Exchange webpage following the presentation. Today's webinar, as mentioned, is presented by Dr. Lillian Hung and is being offered as one of the ASRP Exchange webinars within our Provincial Support Program Meet the Researchers series. We are so pleased to have Dr. Lillian Hung with us today to present her project, It Works, Innovating Together with Technologies in Dementia. This project was funded by the Alzheimer Society Research Program, starting in July of 2018, with project completion ending in June of 2020. Dr. Hung is an assistant professor in the School of Nursing at the University of British Columbia. Dr. Hung completed her postdoctoral degree in gerontology at Simon Fraser University. Her research focuses on examining how technology and environment impact the care experiences of people living with dementia. Her current projects include robotics, silent disco headphones, and mobile apps. At the end of today's presentation, Daisy Couture will be moderating a short question and answer period. Please use the Zoom chat box feature if you have any comments you would like to make or questions you would like to pose during the presentation. Please note, however, we will hold off in asking our presenter to respond to these questions until she has completed her presentation. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Lillian Hung.
Thank you, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm extremely grateful for the funding from the Alzheimer Society of Canada for my postdoc work. So I'm going to start, try to share my screen, and that looks okay. For some reason, just give me 1 second. I'll try it one more time. I'll try it this way. I only have one screen, which is okay. It seems to be working on your side. Okay, so maybe I'm just gonna go with this way. Okay, I'm gonna maybe not to mess with it. And first of all, I would like to acknowledge that I am very grateful to be presenting from Vancouver, the land of Musqueam people that that I have the privilege to live and play in this land. And I also want to acknowledge that I didn't do this work by myself, and you can see from the title, it's called Innovating Together. So it's together. I did this work with a group of patient partners, clinicians in the front line, and decision makers in the hospital in Vancouver Coastal Health. So I would like to acknowledge that. So This is just my disclosure. I do not have any commercial interests with any of the commercial companies, and my funding comes from Alzheimer Society of Canada, and which I said that I'm extremely grateful, and thank you for that support. So today I'll talk a little bit about the work that I have done supported by the Alzheimer Society of Canada, the iPad project that we implemented in the hospital setting in Vancouver here, British Columbia. And the timing of the project was very interesting because when I applied for the funding, when I got the funding and planned for the research, one thing I didn't plan was a COVID. So COVID came in a time that, it's complete unexpected, and but it has such a devastating effect in our everyday work and the patient care. So the project just came timely, and it provided quite a bit of support for our patients. So I am going to talk a little bit about, like, it's really hard to do this presentation without talking about the COVID impact and how the research actually supported patients during the time when we have COVID. So this was a paper that I have written when we had the first lockdown in BC when the COVID hit us. And you can see the co-author that I have, Dr. Jim Mann here. And Dr. Jim Mann was the advisor when I did my PhD in University of British Columbia in the School of Nursing. So he supported me to finish my PhD to look at how we can support person-centered care in the hospital setting. And after that, then we were so after that we were present. After that, then Dr. Jimin continued to support me to do this postdoc, and then there's a number of other patient partners that who also supported me to do this project, the It Works project, and how we can see how we can support patients with dementia using iPad in the hospital setting. So in this particular article that we wrote and published in the journal Dementia, we look at the evidence that who has research to look at how a touchscreen device, iPad or Android device, how they have been used to support people with dementia. So we listed a list of articles that recommended people who, at that time, people feel that they really were looking for tips on how they could use these devices to support their care. This is in another article that I published in the Nursing Older People. When I published, I try to when I want to share the work that I have done with this project, I try to look for more practice-based journals and that clinicians will actually be reading and using these tips that we have created in the project. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about what the project was about. This poster kind of like capture the overview of the project. And we presented this project at the Alzheimer Association International Conference in 2020. And that was last year. That was in the middle of the COVID pandemic. You can see that the co-author that we have on the poster, that Cheryl Chan, it's a nurse leader in one of the hospitals. Dr. Brian Chow is a physician, psychiatrist. John is a medical student at that time in the Faculty of Medicine in UBC. And that is a family partners. Christine, family partner. Neil is also a family partner. Many of you have already known, like Mario and Jim, they are patient partners, and they have been working with me in multiple projects, and they have provided tremendous support in this particular project. Kathy is a nursing student at that time, and now she graduated. And Ryan is a physician, and Dr. Habib Chowdhury, many of you may already know him. He's a professor in the Simon Fraser University, and he was the supervisor for this postdoc project. So you can see, I maybe highlight some of the pictures. You can see what we did was the project was about looking at how we can use an iPad to deliver family video to support patient care in the hospital setting. So I could tell you one time that I got a very heartwarming email that came to me from one of the nurses in Richmond Hospital. She was telling me that, Lillian, I got this patient that she was not eating. She stopped eating because we couldn't have any family visit. And we have the restriction that the family could not come in to visit the patients. But this patient don't know how to explain it to her. She felt her family abandoned her. So she got very upset and frustrated, and she stopped eating. And she's very frail. She's not drinking and she's not eating. We are very, very worried about her. So her family made a video, and they uploaded to the staff uploaded to the iPad, and in order to support that patient. One thing was even more helpful was what that they did was they set up a table for her to eat, and they put the hospital meal tray in front of her. They brought this iPad next to her, and so that her daughter could FaceTime with her in real time, and she was eating with her at the same time. And it was this, that setup that they provided for her. And then she knew that she was able to talk to her daughter. And we all know that the food is not usually, it's not only about, yes, we need the nutrition, but it's also a very social experience. People need to feel that, there's people that they, being with others in the world, that, they care about her. So having her daughter to eat next to her, talking to her during the meal, then that supported her to get through that time that when she was in the hospital. So she started to eat again, and she got better, and she got discharged. So that was a very heartwarming story. So the project, what we did, just like what I said in that, I explained in that story, it's about trying to see how we can use this everyday technology. I mean, we all use it, and outside care setting, we all use a phone, an iPad, or a computer to do connections with our loved ones. But a lot of times when people in a care setting, in a long-term care or in a hospital setting, that they do not necessarily have this access to the, very simple already a technology that we have in our everyday life. So our project is trying to look at what might some of the organizational barrier or clinical barriers, and what might be some of the issues that would stop people on not having access to these devices. So in our study, we find that there were some of the issues, like the human issues. People they need to learn how to use this device for their patients. They need to build up that confidence, like how there's like all different kind of platforms. Like, do we use WhatsApp, or do we use Messenger, or do we use FaceTime? And there's Zoom. There's so many platforms. How do they connect that? And and their hospital have Wi-Fi, and how do they make all these connections? So they kind of require some kind of support in order to do that. And there's mechanical issues. Our patients are saying that that iPad that we use, it's quite heavy. We use a bigger iPad because we wanted to accommodate the age-related patients. Because like with a smaller mini iPad, that they might not be able to see so well, but with a bigger iPad, that it's heavy to carry. And people find that a lot of time when nurses bring the iPad to the patients, and if they have to carry an iPad, then it makes it really cumbersome, because they might have like other materials that they have to carry in order to carry out procedures, like medications or whatever they need, a blood pressure cuff or things that they need to carry. So that we work with a team that we designed that that will attach that mechanical arm and have that link with the wheel, so that becomes the iPad on wheels that you can see on the pictures. But people, it looks like a really familiar other medical equipment that would use in the hospital, so people could just carry that and take it to the bedside. Some of the things we also have to be careful about how we share information with between patients and families, and all those things that we also have to work through in the project. And also, how do we, when we work with patients with dementia, and sometimes they feel quite confused, they're not sure why they were in that particular setting, and how we can approach a patient, explain what the project is about. How do we bring the family in through the iPad? We have seen that sometimes the patients, that the first time when they see the iPad, they don't quite understand what the iPad is about, and they thought there's a real person that over there they would talk to that person, and then sometimes when we're playing a family video, and after a few times they would realize that it is actually a video. From what we have learned from working with patients with different stages of dementia, we find that actually it really works really well for people in later stage of dementia as well. So this is not only a function that would only work for people in early stage that they have used the iPad before and they know what it is. We find that people in the later stage of dementia can also learn, and even though they have never used this device before. So after they have used it a few times, and we had a person who doesn't have any language anymore, he doesn't speak any words, but when we brought the video, the iPad to him, and he would look at the iPad, and when the video is just about to finish, and he would know to put the finger there to close the video. So people in later stage of dementia, if we use it over and over again, people can learn and also could use it very well. And I have received emails when we share this research out with the community. I have received email from families across the country that telling me that they have used the same methods with their loved ones in hospital, that they have very limited stimulations, and they were very worried about their loved ones. And by making these family videos for their loved one to use, it made a huge difference in their quality of life. So this is a picture that showed that our nurse here, and she was talking to a family through the iPad. So why do we use the iPad or video features? Why is it so important to use the video features? Because you can see that our communication that comes through not just the words about what we said. A lot of it is come from the nonverbal expressions. Those are facial expressions. So you see that this particular nurse that she's helping with a family, she's reading all these nonverbal cues that so that helps her to understand the anxiety, the emotional state of the family as well. So the iPad is useful not only for patients, it's also useful for the family. And at the same time, you can see that when a patient with dementia trying to talk to a family members, if they only have if it's a phone, they only hear the audio. That's a lot for them to kind of try to imagine what the family is talking about or what the emotions like. By having that, the iPad to see that person's face, it gives a lot of confidence to the person with dementia to and also empower them to to have a better way to communicate with the family members. This is a picture that shows how this particular patient that she was having trouble to understand what the nurses were trying to ask her to do, and by having the iPad, the family recorded a video and explained to her that the nurses were there to help her, and that significantly reduced the responsive behavior that she was having at that time. When I say responsive behavior, I mean that sometimes our patient with dementia, that they will hit, or they might have verbal words, that's not nice. But a lot of the time that we see that those behaviors are coming from a place that they're trying to communicate. They didn't understand what was going on. So that's why those behavior comes out. As soon as we can find a way to help them to understand what they are going through and what we are trying to do with them, and then that behavior goes away. So we call them responsive behavior. The person responding to an unmet need and trying to tell us that there's something wrong in that moment. Yeah. So
Smarties, didn't you?
Yeah, I don't like Smarties.
Do you eat the red ones last? Touch the red ones to see if they go. You eat the red ones last. There you go. Do you eat your Smarties? Do you eat the red ones last? Do you suck them very slowly? Do you crunch them very fast? Woo. Here we go.
Chew them.
Yeah. Okay, find me another red batch. All right. Now
So you can see that in that video that we use the iPad to help the patient to do all kinds of things. And, they were playing a game at that time. When we sent that video to the family, it was very heartwarming for them to see that their loved one was doing okay that was the time that was last year when we, in the middle of the COVID as well. This is another video that you can see that our rehab staff that he is helping this older person to do exercise like this. It's called active passive reactivated mode exercises to help person to regain the strength. And he's riding on this bike, and you can see the iPad is showing a video tour about, you can actually search YouTube and you can search any place that you would like to go. The good thing about the YouTube is you can actually adjust the speed. You can have it to go faster, or you can have the video go slower to accommodate the person's needs. For a person who maybe just come out from a surgery, or they were sick, then you can have the video go a little bit slower, and then with the machine that you can provide a little bit that kind of active support, kind of like an e-bike. It has a motor. You can ask the motor to support the person to ride that bike. As the person gains some more strength and they're stronger, then you can take that motor away, and you can actually slowly increase resistance, so the person could build more muscle strength. And same as the video, that you can go a little faster, try to push the person a little bit. Sorry, this just another photo of a person using the exercise and looking at the virtual tour. Sometimes we ask the patients like, where would you like to go? So we can help them to accommodate. People that have, we have a lady who was in Italy, that she was really fond of like certain places in Italy. So we helped her to find those places that you could travel when they're doing the exercise. So this is how we did the research. We started with a group of clinicians and names that I have mentioned before, and our patient partners. We started to look at a scoping review, to look at the literature, to see what are some of the evidence, what some other people have done, and then we use that to inform our research. So we co-design the research with patient partners and the whole team, and then make the plan about how we're going to go about with the research, what questions we would like to ask, and how we go about with data collections. Then we bring all these data that we collected. We have done some video filming of the patient using the iPad in a clinical setting. And then we watch the video together, and we do team analysis together, bringing the whole team with patient and family partners. And then we write up the results, and you can see that early on that I have shown you the publications that we have. Patient and family partners, they are co-authors, so as the frontline clinicians that working with us. Just a paper that shows that we work together in that project, the names that I have mentioned about, and the paper in dementia. Then you can see Annette, Christine, Neil, Mario, and Jim, and also the clinical partners as well. This is a paper that showed the toolkit that we have created based on the results that we have, and that there's a QR code if people would like to, like when they have access to the recording, that they could actually use the QR code to look at the toolkit that we have provided. And now patient and family partners, they play a really significant role in terms of creating that the toolkit. So I'm just going to talk about very quickly the next phase. So that project's finished, and we know that it's meaningful, it helps people, and we want to go further to look at based on what we have learned and what we're going to do in the next step. So I am looking at telepresence robot. What we have learned during the COVID time is having the nurse to support the patients to use their iPad. It's really great, but with the reality that with the shortage of the workforce, sometimes it can be very difficult, and people really deserve, when you think about older people in a care setting, they really needed the support to have access to stay connected with the family. So a virtual visit like 10 minutes once a week, it's not acceptable. It's not enough. We have access whenever we want to call our family, we want to talk to our family, we want to have a FaceTime that we have it in our fingertips. And people who needed the family support the most when they're in a care setting, that they deserve to have more connections. So we're working on some telepresence. There are a whole bunch of telepresence robots that you see on this slide, but we're working with a particular one. It's called Double. And let me see if I could show you a tiny video, and I'll just show a small part if it works.
Vascular Institute in Virginia. I found Double actually just surfing the web a couple of years ago, and thought that it could have some potentially really helpful applications for my practice. I keep it mainly in the cardiac surgery intensive care unit and use it mostly to round when I'm not here. Before double, I would call the ICU in the evenings sometimes, especially if there was a patient that I was concerned about, and it would just be a phone call between the nurse and myself. Since I've gotten double, I have that extra dimension of not just speaking to the nurse, but being able actually to look at the patient, look at the monitor, and just get an intuitive sense of how things are. There's been data that showed that the more patients are seen, especially in the evenings for the night shifts, that the better long-term outcomes there are. So it's a real enhancement. It's another aid to giving better care.
Yeah, so I know I have limited time. I just want to give you a sense of what the robot look like that we are going to be using in our next project. And let me see. So I'm going to wrap up. And so this is the plan for the next project. I'm hoping to work with the robot to see we could test out the robot and see how we could implement the robot to support robotic assist virtual care in long-term care in the aged care setting. So right now we have received support from the Vancouver General Hospital Foundations that we have already purchased a couple of robots that we have a student working on customizing the feature of the robot. So I welcome any questions from the audience. So I think I'm going to stop share, and that's all I have for today.
Thank you, Lillian. That was wonderful. Just going to reshare my screen now. Okay, so now would be the time if the audience has any questions they would like to ask Dr. Hung about her presentation, her research findings, anything you found interesting. You can post those in the chat box.
Yeah, and while we're waiting if any of the audience has any questions, I have a question that I'd love to start off with.
Sure.
One of the really big parts of your work, it seemed, besides just, of course, the really interesting work you're doing with technology, but also was working and partnering really closely, both with people with lived experience of dementia, but also with clinicians, which I think is really interesting and you seem to have found really valuable. And I was wondering if you could speak a bit more to how you found that valuable, both for maybe this specific project, but also in general in research, and why you think that improves what you're able to do with research.
Yeah, that is such a good question. Thanks for asking that question, Daisy. And I think there's a lot of assumptions about working with patient partners, especially we're talking about a specialized population, that they're older people living with dementia. And when I reflect on the research team meeting that we have, and before COVID, that we used to have a meeting every Friday morning. Then Mario will come and prepare with a binder of research. He's excited to do this work, and then we'll have physicians and psychiatrists and frontline nurses. We sit around at the table, and you can see that the physicians kind of sit in the corner, and then there's some family partners kind of sit together. Okay, we're together here, and the docs are there, the nurses are here, and you can see that as time changed and how that relationship building, it helped the physician to see, that actually these patients with lived experience, they actually have very meaningful perspective to offer in terms of how we to go about doing the research. And Mario often will say something about, how when you go out to collect data, you have to think about what you wear and how you're going to speak to the patients. Stuff like that was extremely helpful. I think people kind of really appreciate that. And as people started to build trust and learn about, different perspectives. And, as a researcher, I bring the methodology expertise. Patient and family partners, they bring the lived experience expertise. And physicians and frontline clinicians, they bring their clinical expertise. You can see that when you put them all in a pot, that really just enrich the research. So I find it's really worthwhile and very rewarding, and it does take more time, and you really have to invest the effort to do, that relational work, but having that faith in the beginning that thinking really believe this is going to work out, and the magic happens like when we actually just do it, right?
That's so interesting. Yeah, it's not just the perspectives, which you said, are so valuable to have perspectives from different people, but also that actual relational building and changing of opinions, maybe, and actual adding of knowledge. So we have a question that's just come in here from Leanne, who is asking, does that toolkit that I think you mentioned right at the beginning of your presentation, does it contain suggestions for specific programs or activities for patients and families unfamiliar with technology? So I guess, if maybe a family and patients aren't particularly familiar with using stuff, do you contain any ideas about things that they could do online, or what technology they should be using specifically?
Yeah, when we created that toolkit, we had that in mind that we wanna make sure that it's really, really easy to use. Yeah, so we have our patient and family partners that they make YouTube videos. So it's kind of like the how-to. Whenever we're trying to like cook some food and you forgot about the recipe and try to see how other people make it, and we go YouTube the how-to, right? So we did something similar. We list out the one by one and step, and have like our patient partner to explain why doing this important, how you can do it, and going through the step by step. Our family partner has also created a brochure that really lists out the steps, and try to make sure that it's really, really easy for our patient with dementia. And we are very we insist on, we are not only trying to support their group of people that they are living well or doing well or in the early stage. We really want to get to the population that who really needed the help the most, which is the moderate and later stage dementia. That it could be very scary when they are in a care setting, that facing a large team of clinicians that they don't know who they are, or their family are not at the bedside, and at least not possible 24/7. Pre-COVID and during COVID, they have almost no access. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And so would the toolkit, is it specifically to set up like a live video call, like over FaceTime or Zoom or WhatsApp or something? Or did it also offer, recording videos to send, or playing a game together or stuff like that? What did it cover?
Thank you for these questions. And when we started with the project, we really focused on more about recorded family videos. There's a reason for it. And we have tried it, you have to know every person with dementia is different. There's huge diversity, right? And when we are thinking about people in later stage or moderate stage, and they're in a care setting, they're under a lot of stress or distress, we want to create something that will be easy for them to use. So when we see that, when we have like family to pre-record a video, this video usually it's a 1 minute, very short. So that allows the nurse to play that video over and over again, and having that video available 24/7. It helps to reassure that the patients that that help them to understand that where they are at and why they're there, and it's okay. The nurses are here to help them, just to help them have that sense of safety. So that toolkit focus more on the pre-recorded video. And sometimes, I hear in the media, that people will say, oh, my dad has dementia. Yes, it's great to have the FaceTime, but he doesn't know how to use it. And then people often automatically jump into the conclusion that, oh, older people with dementia, that they can't use these technologies, forget about them. That is so not true. If we try to find ways to accommodate their needs, and there are many ways to do it to help them. We know they could benefit tremendously from these technology. It's not it's the older person who is living in that situation, that it's not their fault. It's about how we can make the context, and how we can accommodate to do something with the technology to make it possible for the older person to benefit from it. So using the pre-recorded video, like the story I talk about, that person in the really late stage of dementia, he doesn't talk, there's hardly any language, and he have a very hard trouble to understand what is going on with them, with the clinical environment. By playing the same video over and over again, and he learned. Yeah. and he learned what the video is about. He doesn't know that, that person in the video is his wife, but he knows that is someone that he really liked. So every time we took out the iPad, he knows that he's going to see her. So when he watched a video, before the video finished, that he knows the whole video, right? And when it's just about finishing, he puts his finger on the iPad to close that video, and he's just going to smile.
That's such a great reminder. I think that people can learn if you actually give them the support that they need to and the access, depending on their motor skills and learning. I think that's so wonderful. And I'm curious about your next project that you mentioned there right at the end with the telepresence robots.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain a little bit more about how that might work? So would it be families who had direct access to them, or exactly how would that work to have families, virtually visiting with their loved ones?
Yeah, thanks. So that telepresence robot, we have looked at all different kind of telepresence robot in the market. There are a few different products, and in Australia they have developed a large telepresence robot. It's called Giraffe. But when we compare, the functions and different robots and looking at the price and the size, we find it seems to be a better option for us. And what the robot does is it's mobile, so you can bring the robot to the bedside or to the room of the residents if a resident in long-term care is under quarantine or they are just in their room. So the robot could actually go to the person, and you can remotely control the robot. The family could can move the robot around if the person is moving from a bed or a chair. These the wheelchair people use, it comes in different size, and people lie in different angles, so they can move around when they have conversation, and the robot could just kind of follow that person, and you can tell the robot as well. So for one of the things we learned from these virtual connections for people with older, especially the older people with some cognitive impairment, it's hard, to kind of, not even for them, like even for many people, it's what function, how do I to connect with the Zoom? And I guess there's a bit of learning curve. We all learn how to use it now, but it's hard to expect people to learn all these steps and how to make the connection. But with this telepresence robot, it's actually the zero effort for the person with dementia to the robot come to that person, it just turn on and the person could start. So the person do not need to do any steps and go in where open what app or nothing like that. So it makes it very easy for the person to use. And so I'm hoping having this telepresence robot in the long-term care setting that will reduce the time that the staff have to spend in order to do the setup. So we know there's a huge shortage of nursing staff. So that will save them the time to do other important things that they need to do, and but it also will open the window, provide a lot more access for the older person who are living in the care setting.
Yeah, and you mentioned that it definitely seems like you had a really big benefit to people living with dementia, of course. But it also does sound like it was a benefit for the nurses and the staff as well, for both, of course, making their patients happier and feeling more well. But also it sounds like it was actually helpful in everyday tasks. Did you find that there was a lot of eagerness or excitement from the staff you were working with, or did it feel like another thing they had to, learn and introduce into their very busy work days?
Good question. I don't know yet. And so this is really new to us. And thanks to the funding from the VGH Foundation, Hospital Foundation. So we have purchased a couple robots, and we have taken the robot to the bedside and to see the patients. The patient seems to be quite open to it. Now they didn't seem to be afraid or anything like that. They seem to be quite open, and just like any new technology, they're quite curious about it. And the staff, they haven't learned how to use it yet. So I think they are just like curious, and they sometimes expect a lot from the technology. So we kind of will have to see how we can see the robot can meet up the expectations that the staff have for them. We're working on a survey to see try to investigate people's their perception, attitude, and acceptance to have something like that in a clinical setting. The video that I have shown you that was in US, in Virginia, quite a few years ago that they use in the hospital setting. But in Canada, we have not used something like this in the long-term care setting at all. So this is brand new. And so it will be interesting to see, you know, how people would accept it or not accept it or resist it or embrace it. So yeah, a lot to learn, yeah.
I think that's such a great reframing of it. Being, you know, I think we always think when there's new technology, people get really scared or resistant, but that actually most people are pretty curious about what it can do and maybe what it won't be able to do. But I think that's so wonderful. And so I think those are all our questions for today. Caitlin, if you want to say any last words at the end, but thank you so much for your presentation, Lillian. That was just wonderful.
Yes, thank you, Lillian. That was so interesting to see something from a new perspective like that and really gain a deeper understanding of how technology can be used and the different ways of implementing technology. Those little video clips you shared, I think really brought this research to life, and I think that was a great addition. You also mentioned at the beginning of your presentation how relevant COVID-19 was to your project as time went on, and I was just wondering, to wrap up, if you had any advice for other researchers pursuing their projects during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, I would definitely say, make sure that you work with, you know, people on the ground. So people have lived experience. It's extremely important that if you are trying to do something to support clinical care, that you involve clinicians to do it, because they understand what are the problems, what are the barriers. And by working with them, then you can come up with creative solutions to solve those problems. Work with, like, if you're trying to innovate an intervention that will help patients, make sure you involve patient partners, because you can have all these assumptions that you think that, you know, this is going to provide a tremendous help, and that you might not be hitting the right spot if without, you know, involving the patient partners. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. So I'll just wrap up by introducing our presentation that will be coming up in June. So our next ASRP Exchange presentation will be on June 16th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this will be led by Dr. Renita Dawn Bascu. And she is an ASRP Quality of Life Postdoctoral Award recipient. Her research will focus on dementia, stigma, and rural aging. And her title is, "It is Somewhat of a Taboo Topic." The registration link for Dr. Bascu's presentation is provided on the slide. And as mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, you will be able to access this recorded webinar on our Alzheimer Society website. And for Alzheimer Society staff, it will be posted on Connection. Thank you again for everyone who was able to attend today and share your questions. Thank you once again to Dr. Lillian Hung for an amazing presentation, really enlightening, really inspiring to see the research that can take place with technology. I hope everyone has a great day, and we will close the webinar here.